So Karina, it's great seeing you again. I'm glad that we're connecting on this, and that there's a great opportunity to sort of talk about what you guys are doing, some of the learnings from some of the major investments that you've made to date. And I think you were very interested in sort of sharing some of the challenges that you were immediately had the opportunity to sort of address, roll up your sleeves, and get in front of, given sort of some of the change that you were seeing with your business and in your industry. Specifically, I think when we talked, you were talking about how you had the exciting challenge of rebranding your brand from the ground up and doing it with very limited resources, et cetera. So maybe just start out, give a little background on who you are, what you've been working on, how long you've been there, and sort of the what you're working on today that's been exciting and could share with the Brand Innovators audience.
Thank you so much, Harry. Thank you so much. And great to be here. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, the amazing team of Brand Innovators that always manages, pandemic or not, to bring everyone together and have exciting conversations. I think it's so important that we have this community. So thank you so much. I wanted to talk a little bit about like a case that we lived through the last 2 years. Like literally we started 2 years ago. I have my own consulting company, CDL Global Ventures, and I'm also working with Tourneau and now Buchra for all their challenges in terms of the opportunities for brand marketing and digital. So we came in and we basically were facing that challenge that Tourneau was being purchased by Buchra, who is like the biggest European retailer for luxury watches. And Tourneau is the biggest retailer for luxury watches in the United States. And in 2018, Buchra purchased Tourneau. And then there was a little bit like that kind of pandemic halt, but always the question, so now if Buchra now has purchased Tourneau, what does that mean for the brand? Obviously, there are a lot of opportunities for Tourneau in general, but also, do we want to change the brand? Do we want to go into rebranding or rather not? What this shouldn't look like and has never been is some sort of like post-merger or hostile takeover. It's really about like having a strong partnership now much more globally as the biggest retailer for luxury watches and fine jewelry. So when we were tasked with that challenge, the first thing actually we did, and I've seen this a lot, I worked with Swarovski for a very long time and we also rebranded, but there was sometimes we rebranded, I don't want to say for the wrong reason, but it was like to give a brand refresh, right? To do a brand update, to maybe change something on the naming or change like the colors and look and feel, which is also very important. Sometimes you have a takeover where you really want to completely eliminate the old brand and do this overnight. Or one of my favorite cases is Saint Laurent, where you just like literally put a ton of money and kind of rebrand all the stores and all your communication overnight. We knew that we wouldn't have like a lot of money behind that, but we also really didn't know if it was the right thing to do because we heard a lot of voices. Everyone has their opinion. And what we did, and I think that's so crucial, not just for rebranding, but for any major change that you want to do in your business, we talked directly to our clients. So we did a massive consumer study. We talked to them over VIP dinners. We had like focus groups. We also had obviously a quantitative survey, but we really went like face to face. That was literally the last months pre-pandemic. So we were like right there with our clients and asked them, should we rebrand? Does that make sense? And the answers were very interesting. Just to give you a quick summary, like we heard from a lot of people how important Tourneau as a brand was for them. Also the challenges that they might have had with the brands and the opportunities. But we heard great stories like, I brought this watch, or my dad bought me this watch at Tourneau, and now I'm actually buying a watch for my child who's graduating college. So there's so much like heritage, and Tourneau has been around since 1900 and Buchra since 1888. And so we started to talk a little bit more about Buchra, about their heritage, about some of their core brand values. And through that conversation, we literally gave them, like a press release and asked them to mark what they found stood out. And what really stood out was the heritage of Buchra, the fact that Buchra originally comes from Lucerne, from Switzerland, which obviously in the watch industry is a very, very big deal because that's the heart and soul of watches and watchmaking, and their story in general. So for us, that were a lot of like really great assets that we then also were able to incorporate into the creative discussion and the creative for the campaign. But for me, one key takeaway is really to ask your customers. We also ask about, and we will get a little bit into this, Harry, the experience, in-store experience, like what really is that, what the end consumer wants in an in-store experience, not just what we think it should look like, but really what people value when they come and shop for luxury items. And the same, obviously, also super important than the digital experience, right? What the clients expect and want from a digital experience. So with that, we actually embarked on a journey last year in August. It's really fresh. We started something called the hybrid phase. So because we didn't want to change the brand overnight, we wanted to give us the opportunity to tell the story of Tourneau becoming Buchra. We wanted to give our store teams, our teams, the opportunity to really tell that story. We wanted to make sure that our clients have the opportunity to adjust and not just suddenly in front of a store that's no longer Tourneau and Buchra, and now you have like your, your service or your gift card or something and it doesn't work. So we really decided for a hybrid phase. So with August, we rolled out both names in like the same logo. So we have now a Tourneau and Buchra logo for the next approximately 12 to 14 months. And we have changed that on all the assets. I mean, don't underestimate a rebranding because you literally go from your napkins to your glassware in store to your desktop screen, like to everything, right? To your invoices. You obviously look at all that material and you change that brand. So we're now in a hybrid phase, and that also gives us the opportunity to now market locally. So that means when a store changes over to Buchra and to that new brand and gets a revamp or is being completely rebuilt, then that store is obviously reopened and we can retarget the local community. So I don't have to invest like into a national budget, but I can do really, really targeted campaigns, mostly with a strong digital focus. So that helps me obviously tremendously on the marketing side.
We want to show the video that you guys put together. I think Brand Innovators has that video queued up.
Yeah, that's our basically our kind of commercial. That's our video that we played over YouTube advertising. We obviously sliced and diced it, especially for social, but it's also in store. And it's really showing that like two brands coming together in the essence of time.
And here's the joint logo.
Yeah.
That last screen. I can actually pull it up here. Maybe I'll share the screen on my screen.
Sent that over.
Yeah. You can see that sort of that combination of brand. Is that showing up for you?
These two worlds coming together, very iconic. So really like the Matterhorn in Switzerland, you can't be more like iconic than that. And then obviously representing for the United States, but in this case, because the flagship is in New York, Manhattan, the Statue of Liberty. And we had a teaser campaign with the Empire State Building. So it's really about those two worlds coming together. And also because we are retailers, so I cannot advertise with actual product because I have a lot of different beautiful brands. So that was our key creative. And we ran the campaign for approximately 6 weeks with a strong, again, geo-targeted effort in Manhattan. We didn't have any budgets that had a plural S behind them. So we really had to focus, but we were able to like manage to even be on Times Square, and we had a complete city takeover. And the results were pretty impressive. So we had over 200 million in impression. I've earned media of like over 500 million, an increasement in engagement 60%, and obviously because we need to track it back to sales, strong increase in sales and traffic in the store, and not just like 50%, but even higher.
So, I mean, those are amazing results. Maybe you can share, just sort of looking back, what were the elements of this, you know, given that you said you had such a limited budget, and it really went into, when we spoke, it really went into changing the experience for the customer. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what are the elements that you employed to get what you were trying to achieve done, you know, given the limited budget that you were operating under. Like, where did you decide, you know, to put those resources, and sort of how are you able to achieve the results that you were, you know, given sort of the challenges that you faced? I think taking people through an understanding of like your decision making and the trade-offs that you had to make, you know, what worked really well, and what would you have would you have done differently?
Yeah. I mean, I want to give credit to an incredible team that I have, and an incredible marketing director. And we were really, one thing is really being like local, and ideally from a digital perspective, geo-targeted, but also like really focus local. It would not have made sense to try and spend that money in a broader nationwide campaign, but really focus on Manhattan in terms of out of home. Then obviously we have, because we are a strong advertiser with our brand partners, so we were also able to really, you know, we have strong relationships. We were able to really get great slots and negotiate very well, but which we do in-house, not with agency support. And for it, what for me is always key is like the digital assets. This was the first time for Tourneau where we really also had we have this video, we had strong digital assets. So we were really able to put a lot into paid social, and that turned out really, really well for us. Also, media, PR. So we really worked with an agency for PR and had a lot of these editors, a lot of our partners come also to the store, because what also comes with this is just one part, right? That's kind of the awareness part. But then where it really goes into conversion is to get people into the store, and then the experience in the store. And for us, this whole rebranding was an incredible opportunity to challenge the status quo for Tourneau in both ways, especially like the retail experience. And now what we are currently working on is a full digital roadmap to also now bring that upgraded experience online and into from a digital perspective.
Do you find that, you know, one of the things when you were talking to me, you talked about for the in-store experience, you said that you wanted to make it less prohibitive, meaning that it was more embracing, more comfortable, less stodgy, less you know, less with an attitude, just much more easy and casual, and it would sort of encourage people to step in and come in and spend time in the store, versus intimidate people, and because they're like, they don't want me in the store. They're scared of, you know, like I'm below who
I mean,
they're
I hate to say it, but it is, we always said we obviously want to be best in class in our world, in that luxury watches and jewelry world, but we really want to see like best in class general retail hospitality in that luxury space. So it doesn't even need to be in luxury space, can be like any premium consumer goods. But what some of the feedback really was is that, I went to the Tourneau store and I felt underdressed. So we don't want you to not be thinking that you can step in because you're not wearing your 3-piece suit, right? So that's totally passé, but that was such a weird lingering feeling for whatever reason, right? So what we really wanted is like an open environment, and we have worked with amazing architects and really heavily driven from very strong innovation, also from Switzerland, where and I really encourage you, not because I want to sell a watch, no, but because I really want you to experience it yourself, to come to 47's, our new flagship store. It's 3 levels. We have 3 bars there. We have constant programming. We work with an art curation. We have obviously the most beautiful watches and timepieces and jewelry, but we just really try to make that an environment where you can experience, you know, where you can come and just hang out, where you don't need to be Beyonce to like sit in your corner and drink champagne and be presented the watches or the jewelry that you are interested in. So I think that's like really, and you also see that in the space. It's like a hybrid design. So it's no longer that classic watch retail where you have this brand and then brand B and then brand C, but it's really open. That's what we call the hybrid design. And it's no longer like there is a watch case and there's one person standing behind it and you're on the other side. You're really invited to just like lounge there or be in one of the bars and just literally just hang out and then get into a conversation, because we want to have a conversation with you.
Great. And I think that embrace of the fact that people will feel intimidated and making it that much more, I guess, available to people. I think that's a really powerful, probably change just in terms of getting people to want to walk into the store. Plus, free coffee is always a draw. So, you know, you started this rebranding process by reinventing the customer experience in store. Sort of like, what's next? I mean, you touched upon digital and making digital really the next pillar. How do you see yourself sort of doing that and driving that so that it has that same availability potentially as what the store, what your store experience is?
For me, it's really one of the most exciting projects, and especially, and that's what I always say this, like, be mindful, because this is really like classic heritage brick and mortar retail, right? And I've seen this also through my consultancy, like there's so many other brands, especially when you have a strong heritage, you grew up in brick and mortar, there's still so much to do in terms of the digital transition, right? I hate that word, but it's still a thing. And I'm sometimes amused when you literally work with a brand and they have a challenge to actually facilitate a return in store, right? So there's no full omni-channel integration yet, but then yet we are talking about like, okay, what does metaverse mean and what kind of opportunities are there for us? So it's really about creating a step-by-step plan and a digital roadmap that really enables us to upgrade that experience. And for me, I always saw the pandemic in a weird way, not that the pandemic was good by no means, but there is a little bit of like a huge acceleration, right? Where every brand now really needed during the pandemic completely reinvent the digital game, or at least starting the digital game or rethinking the digital game. And that's the same for us. I mean, the first thing when we headed into the pandemic was, okay, what are we doing now? All the stores are closed. So basically it comes back to text commerce, right? You start like really engaging with your clients through email, or even better, through text or WhatsApp. And you start thinking, not that we had like at that point in time an official tool or like a software solution behind it, but you go into that concierge function, right? You're now enabling your brand ambassadors, your sales associates in the store to really provide a concierge service, obviously backed by operations and HQ, to really bring the watches in front of their clients without the clients coming ever to the store because they are closed. And I think that's really now implementing that in a much more professional way. I think that's what's crucial for us in that industry, not for everyone, but that's one really, really crucial step.
So broadening it, because I know we have only a few more minutes, you know, I would love you to share sort of your takeaway. I mean, this was a super interesting project, and obviously is probably a project that everybody across Brand Innovators faces at one point or other in their career. Many of them probably doing it through the pandemic, others, probably going into it this year or next year. Walk me through, like, when you have these kinds of major projects, like, how do you figure out, what's the most important thing to get done, how to think about, the role that you need to play in terms of shepherding one of these projects through. Um, Walk me through sort of like how you make some of those decisions.
For me, it's always like starting with a vision, like kind of what, in an ideal world, if you had all the resources and all the budgets, what would that look like? And then really breaking it down. And then for me, a big part is like process and project management. It sounds so boring, but it's really so important to break it down in pieces that are actually manageable to implement, and also constantly, and this is more about like organizational and a little bit leadership, because you have so many stakeholders, right? So you constantly need to be sure that you get everyone on board. So we had like steering committees, we constantly had presentations, we really were super disciplined in taking a step-by-step approach. So starting with the big vision, we're doing this also now for the digital roadmap, like really, okay, what would we love to do? And then how do we break it down? And not like try and buy everything at once or do everything at once, but like really break it down and doing a phased approach, and usually also start with, my first MVP, like, or prototype, and always make sure that you have, because digital is a lot about the connection also in retail, like with the store. So I never want to make a decision on a solution if I don't have the actual salesperson or someone who's then working with it on a day-to-day basis involved. Also for the rebranding, right? We also went to the stores and said, do you think this makes sense? Do you think you can work with this hybrid solution? And here's how you answer the client. So just to really start big and then narrow it down.
That makes sense. And like in this particular project, what was that first like case of like what you needed to get done first? And then sort of where did you want to end up when you think about it that way?
Just on the rebranding or everything?
On the rebranding, but then leading to everything that you're doing there.
Get my stakeholders convinced. I mean, again, for me, the rebranding, what really helped us like get it started without having too many discussions around should we not, how does this look, was really like asking your clients, like making that effort and making that investment to go out and do that field research. I think that was a huge step and was really the right thing to do, because we also were like, why would we do this? We can just like go ahead and rebrand or not rebrand. Why would we ask them? Because obviously you have like a hypothesis already in your head. But I think that was absolutely crucial. And then the vision obviously is always getting bigger, right? That doesn't stop, because there's like, especially when you look at digital, I mean, every month, every day, there's a new product, there's a new opportunity. So I think that's more being really disciplined and making sure you're committing yourself and then going with a roadmap and then looking at it again.
Makes sense. And so it sounds like getting buy-in from the stakeholders, getting them to buy into what you're doing, getting them behind it, having them understand what the goals are. That seems like that's mission critical number one thing, so that you have the resources and the people behind you, and they're not second guessing many of the moves that you're making. So that sounds like that's like the big takeaway in terms of how you see this.
Yeah, but also being, I think so, yes, but also like the excitement, right? For us, really, the rebranding was an opportunity to challenge the status quo. And that's something that got everyone excited. Like, and then like really developing a vision and helping people understand what that could look like. It's like similar when you do like for a software solution, you have a demo, like you show your clients what that could look like and what that could actually do. And I think that's key.
That's great. If people have questions, by the way, please use the Q&A widget to ask the questions, and I can save that for the end. So one of the next questions, since you're a consultant as well, and that's part of sort of what you do, and you consult for a number of brands, CDL Ventures, walk me through how you see the role of CMO evolving,
Oh my
both
God.
pre-pandemic, where we are today. What is the role as you see it? Like, how do you modernize that role given the challenges, I think, faced in the pandemic from your own experience?
Great
And
question.
what would be the advice that you would give in terms of people listening in as they think about their own skill sets and what they should be focused on?
I think there hasn't been a more exciting role in, especially I think the past 5 or 10 years, than the CMO, because marketing is just, and I still had that. And sometimes, again, I work with a lot of these heritage brands, and sometimes it's like, oh yeah, you're printing flyers and you're doing billboards, and that's kind of marketing. No, it's not. And I just think that's something that is almost like the part where, it's easy. What's really challenging is the digital. And I today would not go personally, I would not take on a CMO role without being responsible for digital as well. Because I think you really want to not just have a CRM under the CMO function, but you also want the P&L, because that gives you a certain strengths if you actually have that P&L responsibility. Plus you then also kind of own that channel. And by that, I don't mean the money part or something, but really in terms of this is your number one source of data and of information. And for every marketing job today, that's where you need to come from to make those decisions. You need the data points to make those decisions. You need to understand your clients to make those decisions. And that's why, again, I'm always coming back. I love that we have the actual real life conversation with clients, because that was for me so much more meaningful than the data points. But we also, because you get so many different opinions and you cluster it, and then you obviously want to go back to your actual database just to see if that aligns, because you also want to kind of stress test it. But that's for me absolute key. So really the combination of marketing, digital, however you want to call it, MarTech, whatever, I don't care, but making sure you have that combined. And then also for me, I, for example, also have the opportunity to run customer service, because it's so crucial, again, in our industry, in the retail space, to think about that experience constantly, right? To make sure that the experience that we provide in store is also the same experience that you have when you call us, right? And then again, by customer service, because it's also the first source to talk to someone, the first person who gets information from the clients. If I have no idea what the clients tell my customer service rep, not good.
Doesn't help. And how do you get that information fed back to you so you actually know what's going on?
We have reports. So we have reports, and then especially, obviously, that has changed a lot because we are monitoring Yelp, Google, all those reviews. So community management is super crucial. And that's obviously also, I think people are much more honest, good or bad, if they can write it anonymous on a social channel instead of on the phone. So I think that's definitely gives you a lot of insight, right? And that's then also, and that's so important, is then cross-functional, right? You cannot, no one is like an island. You cannot, even if you have all these opportunities, you cannot work by yourself. So it's always cross-functional, some KPIs from the stores inform marketing and vice versa, right? If community management is a KPI that also informs the store, right? If there's a store that constantly gets negative reviews, then that's a problem. And the same is for us. We have an amazing HR person, and she is very she is the crucial part of the experience in store.
And the HR person is the crucial part of it.
I know, it's very unique. It's very unique. I know, but that's because she has that amazing skill set, and so we partner a lot on that experience.
That's super interesting. From where you sit and what you've seen, how has the pandemic changed how you do business? How does it affect brand discovery and marketing? What are you doing fundamentally different now that you weren't doing before?
I think that comes back to your world a lot, that digital discovery, right? So we really want to make sure, and I'm not saying we're doing that today, but there's a lot of opportunity for digital discovery. Even pre-pandemic, we know that like 80% of our clients, even if they heard from a friend that they bought their watch at Tourneau, what is the first thing that that person does? If they are interested, they go online. So I think that is really one, like that's really super crucial to ensure that you have that. Sorry, now I lost my thread for a second. So understanding that everyone who is at some point in touch with your brand has an online touch point and has a digital touch point. That was pre-pandemic 80%. It's now like over 90, close to 90. So it's like really, really crucial to get that digital piece and the online presence right.
And that's the thing that you're going to be investing in primarily going forward.
Correct. So that we don't just have like a great in-store experience, but also a great digital experience. And that's obviously connected, right? Here I'm talking also about like clienteling, like CRM upgrades, but also so that it's also all the data comes back into the store and vice versa.
When you're giving advice to other marketers, on how they should be thinking about the future, what advice would you give them, in terms of the things that they should really lean into, for the future in terms of both capabilities, skill sets, as well as, how to position themselves for success?
I think it's a balance. I think definitely like invest and really understand digital, and also like be constantly on your toes, because that changes so much. So whatever advice I would have, or if I would have done like a digital transition 5 years ago, I cannot copy paste that today. Like that's something you really want to be very cautious, and also be like, you can't do it all yourself, but have someone maybe on your team to really make sure you're also constantly in touch with the right vendors, understand new products, and really know that market. And then it's a balance. I also think we, for example, make a lot of sales, but if there's a VIP client event, right? If there's a client event, someone comes to the store, they feel special, there's a special presentation or something that feels unique and special, not everyone has access to, that's also absolutely crucial. So I think it's definitely a balance, but you want to make sure you think through all these touch points. We talked like years ago, like I'm still 360, but I still like sometimes when I'm challenging myself, I'm still going in like the circle and try to understand if this, whatever activation or whatever I'm trying to do is really hitting all the points.
Makes sense. There's a good question that just came in from Brian, since we only have a couple more minutes and we're at Q&A, but I love his question. We can even end on this question. There are a lot of discussions around collapsing the funnel, merging branding and performance marketing into one media practice. Do you agree with the shift, at least for some parts of the market, but specifically, would you agree with this perspective for luxury?
No, I mean, for example, every day we have a digital meeting. So I look at where I'm investing almost on a daily basis. So I think you can't just have like a common statement. You need to do it campaign after campaign, and you need to see where does it make most sense to invest. I usually, and also on the maturity of your business, right? So we last year invested so much like just on conversion, then second half or last part of the year, really brand awareness, right? So with this new campaign, it's all about like generating brand awareness that doesn't necessarily go fully into conversion. It did in that case, but that's not always the case. So I think there is no right answer that you can just like, you can't do this on autopilot.
And so, is it different for luxury versus other parts of the market? Do you feel like theoretically, if you're selling CPG, stuff on supermarket shelves, you could do branding, but then have every single one of those ads, be one click away from a checkout, in a cart of the prospective retailer, versus luxury, which has to be potentially more aspirational?
So I said I was reading the Q&As as well because I wanted to make sure I get it right.
So the question is there anything special about luxury that's different from that of, let's say, less costly or more mass market products?
I think you have, you want to invest in lifetime value, because obviously it's not like I'm not buying like the t-shirt like 12 times a year. I'm buying this probably one time a year, but you would be surprised how many people are actually 6 months later already looking at their next watch purchase. So I think we just have like one chance to get it right? And then hopefully get that person for a lifetime. So our conversion rates, or not our conversion, sorry, our ticket items are obviously much higher, but I don't have, unless you're really into watches and you want to like read everything about it and you want to read all our emails about it, but then usually I don't get you like every day, right?
And everybody else, you're getting them once a week from an opportunity perspective. Makes a ton of sense. Well, thank you so much. This was so great. I'm glad that you got to share sort of what you're working on and how that's transformative, especially with the challenge of actually bringing two brands together and doing so in a way that has to sort of maintain the authenticity as well as the recognition of Tourneau, knowing that within some period of time it's all going to be Boucher, as that launches and becomes a well-known name in the United States. So thank you for sharing that experience as well as the transformation that you're trying to sort of create, and looking forward to seeing it in action over the next six months to a year as you go through your transition plan and rebrand.
Thank you so much.